Right, welcome back to Delboy's Garage. Now this is going to be air injection removal. I want to finally set about this task. It's not difficult. These are the air injection pipes, or this is one of them, and I'm going to remove them and blank them off so I stop getting the popping in the exhaust. Very simply put, the air injection, as I've explained in a previous video, is a method of injecting cold fresh air into the exhaust port. After the exhaust gases have hit it, it puffs that little air injection in, and that effectively heats up the exhaust charge, and that vaporizes any leftover unburnt hydrocarbons, which then effectively makes the exhaust a little bit cleaner for the tree huggers. But what it does, that vaporization of any burnt or unburnt gases in the exhaust leads to a pop in the sound of the exhaust as it comes out. So that popping can stop. Yes, you will be emitting a little tiny bit more unburnt fuel mixture, but there are no emission checks in this country, so it's not an issue for MOT, and it's certainly not that much to worry about because it's burning quite lean anyway. I've done a plug check and it's absolutely fine. So without further ado, set about it, take the tank and seat off and see what looks underneath. Right, first thing is take the seat off, because you need to take the seat off to get to the bolts that hold the tank on, and what we're removing is underneath the tank. Note to self, I must get some of those little remote seat bolts you can do with your fingers, messing about with Allen keys. There we are. Okay, seat off. Alright, the next thing to do is these two bolts here. Whip those out, then you can lift the tank up and slide it backwards to remove it. Obviously there's some stuff to remove underneath. I'll show you that at the same time. Alright, rather bizarrely, they're a little 7mm head, a tiny bolt. Little tiny thing that holds the tank on. Nothing too beef. And now the back of the tank is free to lift up. Just got some rubber bungs that stay in place, but just make sure that obviously you don't push that around too much because you can knock them out. They're only just pushed in. They've got like little metal inserts, but they can be knocked out. Right, straight bars. Now, okay, now when it comes to removing your tank, underneath here you've got a spring-loaded fuel line each end. It goes from the pump in the centre down to between the two fuel injectors, and to undo it, I believe, loosens it. So there's a little trick. I'll show you this. This is what I've done on lots of bikes. Works every time. Get yourself something nice and soft and a bungee close to hand, and all you do is on this side there's a little overflow pipe just to pop off, and you can lift up the tank, slide it back off its rubber bungs, and when it's free you can lift it. You can rotate it for about 90 degrees, come back to about the point where it bolts on, pop it on a cloth there and just rest it on the main bar, exposing here everything you need. Now the bungee, all I do is around the stand and up there through the hook, so that's not going anywhere. That's very secure there now, in the sense that, right, it's not very secure, but they ain't going to fall off. That's as secure as it needs to be. And I'll show you up underneath. Let's grab you. Just want to show you what you see up underneath there. If you can see, and this is a test of the light. Now, up under here, this is the fuel line, connected up here to the fuel pump. Now these spring-loaded clips, these are a sealed clip. So you take this plastic shroud, there you are, take this plastic shroud off, and then you can undo the fuel supply. Now personally, I don't like doing it. I just don't like undoing anything like that unless I have to, because there's no need. It's never the same seal the second time. It's a nice tight fit from the factory, and I want it to stay that way, and I don't need to take the tank completely off. That then goes down to a similar clip there. How's that for low light? Right under the tank in the dark. That's the same thing, and I don't want to take that off either, but there's enough slack on it, and it's armoured with this spring so it won't go anywhere. It's got like a spring over the top of it, and that's fine. There's the little overflow pipe. You just literally pull it off and push it back on afterwards, and there's a plug socket there which is for your sender unit and the power to the pump and so on. So just leave it done. That's it, leave it done up, because everything we need to deal with is that there. Come around the other side. Everything I'm going to be attacking today is all here. It's that unit there we're taking off, that little pump there, this hose there, there's a plug here which is going to stay connected because that little tiny thing there is staying on, and I'll come to that in a second as to why. And obviously this has all got to come out as well, but everything I need to attack is all there. I don't need to take the tank completely off, and as I showed you, it's quite safe there. It looks precarious, whoops, it looks precarious sat there like that, but it's not, because the bungee's holding it on and there's a little tiny bit of weight that way just holding it, so that's as secure. I'm comfortable with that, and it's my bike, so it's my risk. I'm quite happy with that. Right, so to get to this, what's the first thing? On this side I've already taken out the hose there, so I'm going to take this one out next, disconnect the pipe, and then I can put the bungs in, and then we can start taking off all the garbage underneath related and associated with it. So that's the first thing. Let's get that out. Okay, there's a little rubber hose on the top with a classic hose clip. Slide that out of the way, and then you can pull that off out of the way, like that. Out of the way. It's got a permanently crimped clip in that, so you trash them to take them off, and all I do is just give them a little wiggle, and it gives them enough space so they're out of the way. You have to get a new one if you're ever going to replace it, or you can put a Jubilee clip in its place, whichever you like. And then that, once you give it a little bit of welly, that just lifts off, and all that is a little, what do they call those? It's like a wire wool seal. So if you want to refit that ever, just use a Jubilee clip. I think those little permanent ones are just something to do with the factory, making it look neat. And now we can actually take the air injection pipe out, as we did with the other one. So that's a 13mm step socket or ring spanner. That's a step ring spanner. It's a ring spanner with a step. Ain't hard, is it? Use your brains, a little bit of cloth like that. Wrap it around the spanner, and then when you're on it, there we are, nice and firmly fitted. Put it in between where it's going to touch any bodywork. There we are. Once that's gone, it just comes out quite easy. Now there's no, there's a little squash washer on the bottom of it, like a spark plug, so you can treat it like a spark plug. So when you come to insert the plugs, the blanking plugs, we'll put them in with no more force than a spark plug. It's an aluminium head, you don't need to hang off it. And there we are. There's the other one. Right, blanking plugs. Right, I showed you these when I came out of the shop. That's the only pitch and thread I could find that's M12 by 1.25, but obviously they're way too long. They go right down and stick into the exhaust and interrupt gas flow, and I wouldn't get a spanner on that in the space provided. So they are, because they were only £1 or £1.40, I took them off him anyway. So these are Nissan Micra sump plugs, probably about a dozen other cars as well, with a little copper washer, just for good measure. Now what I'm going to do with them, because they're not going to go in with any force, I think the trick is, I'm going to do this. I've done this loads of times on oil seal bolts, and all I do is a little tiny bit of Yarl silicone, nothing much, just a little bit like that, and then put it around the base. It's only going around the base, it's not going on the thread to any degree. That's it, just a little bit like that, and then put the washer in it, and then a little bit more on the washer, just to hold it down, give it a spread over. That's it, nothing much, certainly no build or any excess. I'm going to wipe a bit of that off actually, so a little bit more. Do the same on that one. A little squidge of silicone, nothing much. This is the high temperature silicone we used on the exhaust that sealed so well. Just going to pop a little bit around there like that. Drop the washer in it. Now all this will do is this will ensure that you get a gas tight seal. And okay, we could say that cylinder head gets more than 300 degrees centigrade, which this stuff is, but if it's there it can do more than if it's not there. Now, next thing is towel. Wipe the excess out of the thread because I don't want it in the thread. And I want to seal these in. And no, don't use Loctite. Don't ever use Loctite putting this stuff in because it will stick itself in the head forever. You'll never get it out. When you come to take it out, you'll strip the thread. In fact, conversely, what you do is the old anti-seize. So this is what I like to use, is this hard, like a Pritt stick, glue stick type stuff. This is just anti-seize copper slip. Put a bit on there and just see that it goes in the thread all the way around. And this will mean that long term you can get them out in the future. The silicone will have oxidized and gone, but this on the inside of the thread will make sure that if you need to get them out, or when time comes, if you want to take them out in the future, they'll just come straight out. And we use this rather than regular grease because this doesn't melt and regular grease does. It will just melt and run away like oil. And that's what we do. Just the first 3 or 4 threads, fill them up, then when you wind it in, it will spread itself all the way down the thread, so it'll be nicely protected. Right, let's do the other one. We can get them in. Alright, I want to actually show you down inside there. So there we are with our little, oops, there we are with our prepared bung. I'm going to drop that in the hole. Don't get your fingers in there. Now as you do it up, the anti-seize gets pushed up the thread, so it'll all be coated nicely, and then it beds finally against the silicone to get a nice seal. And as you can see, where are we? This one spanner. It's 14mm rather than 13, but that still goes in. Plenty of time, plenty of space, and it looks like a head bolt, so nice and unobtrusive. You could put a black bolt in there if you really want to. It won't make a lot of difference really, you won't see it in there. Just doing it up carefully and gently, mainly so as not to chip the black paint on the engine. There we are. Right, now there's a little rule of thumb I love with these because it's got a nice soft copper washer in it, brand new one. I like to seat the thing and then put about 1/8 of a turn on it after that. Nothing more. And we're going to resort to the old marker paint trick just to make sure it doesn't move. Now there will obviously be a torque setting, naturally, but it feels, putting it in, it just feels like a spark plug. It's got that soft, you do it up, but it feels like it wants to keep going without any real tightening force. So all I'm going to do is put them in like that, that's it. No more than that. They're not getting wound in with big force, purely because it's an aluminium cylinder head and I am not stripping it. Here we are. Now the trick after that is a little bit of nail varnish. Just undo it. This is two-handed. Hang on a minute. Our Penny's just got in from work, so she's not able to join us today. And then all we do with that is a little tiny dot of your favourite colour just on the outside of the bolt, like that, just so you can see it. Doesn't need much, and then you can see if that's moved. If there's any movement on that bolt, if it undoes itself, you'll be able to see that because it'll be in a different position. It's adjacent to the front fin, and I can look at that anytime and make sure it stays where it is. It will go black, the heat will oxidise that to black, but it will still be there. Okay, right, time for the other one. Now, I suppose I could put these in with a socket and torque them up. And a load of people are probably going to say torque them in, they're this much. But honestly, over years and years and years and years and years, you get used to it. You get used to feeling the right pressure. You know what they should be. You know they feel right. And also with torque wrenches, I'm not going to stand here and contradict torque wrenches or manufacturers' settings, but there are plenty of people, plenty of my friends have said they've done something up with the torque wrench and it's stripped or it's snapped off. And there's 1,000,001 reasons. It could be fatigue bolt, it could be different metal, it could be the torque wrench is not calibrated right, it could be 1,000,001 things, and I haven't got a fully calibrated brand new torque wrench any more than anyone else. So to be honest, I think feeling for it is far safer. Certainly when you've got a little bit of experience and you know what that pressure feels like, what it feels like just here in your hand, you know, the amount of pressure on your hand, the way it's tightening up, the way it feels. That's nice. There we are. That feels good, that ain't going anywhere. If you want to torque yours up, you do that. Personally, I like to just put a little dot of marker paint on there, and I can keep an eye on that right adjacent to that fin, and I know when it's moved or if it's moved. A bit more. There we go. And also the other thing, when a mechanic or a workshop look at your bike and they see you've done a modification and they see a bit of marker paint in there, any professional mechanic will know that that is somebody who's got a little bit of common sense. Right, next thing, take this off. Let's get all the garbage out of the way. Okay, now this whole system, as I've said a million times already, it sucks air from the airbox through this hose, through this valve, and then via this pump, and pumps it into the head or into the exhaust ports, and this is the feed pipe. So we have to take that out because I don't want it in the way, and it's just a push fit into the airbox like that. Literally just a push fit, and it's a squishy rubber thing, and it leaves a hole there. Now the very best thing in the world, and kindly donated by my good friend Johnny Cactus, he said he's used these before. Now that I recognise as a chair leg bung. Seen them before? Have a look at the bottom of your chair legs. Easy peasy, and it's exactly the same size. So that'll go straight in the hole there. But obviously, a bit of common sense and a bit of silicone goes a long way. So all I'm going to do is around the base, just in the last section of it there, I'm just going to put this silicone. And this great stuff, this silicone, it sets like a hard rubber, and you just break it off when you need to, so it doesn't cause a problem. Just going to put that in there. There we are. On the floor where I'll probably tread on it. Just spread it in. Oops, where are you? There you are. Spread that in there so you've got the best possible seal, because that's going to suck air in if it's not got the blowpipe in place. So let's pop that in its hole. Let's just show you quick. You can't see. Sorry, chucking them all over the place here. Right, there's the hole concerned. One bung going in. And that just literally pushes down. Simple as that. There it is. Job done. You wouldn't even know it's a modification. Just like all these things with the silicone, just get a good press down on it. Get a little bit ooze out, and then wipe it off out of the way. There you go, job done. Right, that's dealt with the airbox. Right, now starts with this big metal pump there. Don't need that in place. Now at this point it's worth noting that I can actually run the bike now as it is, tuck all this stuff, just ram it all up under the tank out of the way and run it just like that. But I want it out of the way. There's no need to keep all this on here. This is just garbage I don't need. So you may as well remove it. But little common sense things, what I like to do is that's out of the way now. So obviously these are neat little bolts threaded into the frame. So I'm just going to pop them back in. I like doing that because it just kind of leaves them there. If you ever need to do it, you need to refit anything, they're in a threaded. This is what the factory have done rather cleverly, is this is like a little piece of what feels like 3mm metal plate welded to the frame as a bracket, and it's threaded. So why not leave the bolts in it? It serves two purposes. You don't lose the bolts in the future, which is always good, and the threads in there don't rust because they won't be protected by paint because there's a thread in there. And now that's all free. You nip around the other side and undo the little box that this is connected to so it can come out. Now let's just bring you in a bit. Right, okay, next little thing is a Torx 27, and you get this little clip which just holds cables out the way for now, so it's staying on. But we'll just move those two throttle cables and we can get to them, and we'll just undo those for now because they hold this whole assembly on, and they will go back in, but not for the sec. Let's take them out for a minute. Now these are Loctited in. You can feel as they're coming out that they've got a little bit of stuff on the thread, a bit resistant. So I shall pop a little bit back on there, possibly. Right, just get these out of the way. Now just take note of things when you're doing stuff, just leave that there for a minute. Take the bolt out of the way first, or the screw. And once the little Torx bolt, you can see there's a little metal clip there. And it kind of goes in, you know, that way, just so you don't lose where you are with things. And then that little assembly is all adrift. I'm just going to remember where that goes, keep it safe. Now, this will now lift off there, like that. Be careful because this is sharp metal and I don't want to scratch the frame. I just want to get this out. Now, a pair of pliers, I'm going to separate it, break the thing up a bit, rebuild it later on. Hose clip out of the way, and then pull that off its hose. Right, now this here, I'll come back to that. I'm just going to leave that there for a minute, out of the way. Now that is free. Stick that on the bench, we'll come back to it in a minute. Right, now as you can see, this here is a coil bracket that holds the coil to the right hand cylinder, and at the same time it holds this little thing by means of those two little holes there on those two little metal pegs. See them in the light there. So it'd be nice to eliminate this bracket, but I'm not, because it holds the coil and it's a nice way to bolt it on. And obviously here you've got two lovely stainless steel inserted pressed in threads. These are stainless steel threads pressed into the frame. So I'm going to use those. That's going to go back in situ. But before we do it, I've got to take just one more thing off. And that, let's just back you out a bit, hang on. See, Penny's not here, can't you? Right, that's better. Now this is the final bit of the assembly. I'm just going to take that hose off there. Now obviously that will go on a bench. I'll come back to all in a sec. So this little thing here, if I unplug this, you can unplug it. There's a couple of things you can do with it. Where are you? Right, you can unplug this completely and junk it. But then what happens is you get an engine management light because it detects that it's missing. It's sending voltage to it. The voltage is biffing off into hyperspace and something's wrong. If this is working, this little pump, you can't hear it. It's completely silent and the engine's running and you ain't going to hear it. So that will be happy there, chuffing the air out, and it won't do any harm at all. It can just sit there merrily and exist forever, and it's not going to do any harm. So that can stay there. You can leave it in place. If you really want to take it out, there's a simple way. All you do is take the plug, well, all you do is cut those two wires and put a resistor in, which normally the resistor's about, I suppose, yay big. They're about £10, and then you'd have to connect the resistor safely to the side of the frame so it doesn't move around and contact anything and rattle about. And to me, that ain't much bigger than a resistor, and it does exactly the same thing. It's a little heavy metal solenoid, so that's just going to stay on the bike. I don't need to take that off. It's right up there out of the way. Once all this is screwed back in place, you won't see it when it's done. So I'm going to screw all this back together, and then see what looks like. You can see Penny's not here, can't you? I'm going to screw this back together and see what it looks like when it's done. Join me in a minute. Alright, so there it is. That's all it is, little doodah. I'll put the bracket back on. Bracket's nice and tight, so the coil's held, they're all back in place. And all that does, like I said, is these little tool rubber grommets. You just push that under there and it just fits on. But because obviously the hoses, it had a hose going to there and a hose going forward, it was held by its hoses. It's now not held by anything, and that could fall off and cause a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a cable tie around the body of the thing like that, push it on its bracket, there it is, literally zip tie it on, and I'll just zip tie that into place so it ain't coming off, and it's just held on its little bracket by a cable tie. There we are. Right, welcome back to Penny. Say hello.
Hi. I've had a sip of wine. I feel revitalised now.
The camera work may be a little more shaky from now on in. Right, just going to bung the tank back on. Quite straightforward. Remember, we didn't do anything except take this breather hose over here off, and this wire, which is the power lead to the pump, has got this little clip here, this little retaining clip, which goes on these two cables once it's back in place. But for now, they all sort of hang where they are. We've got rid of a load of stuff under here. Bolts are all back in place. I'm just going to lift, take the retaining bungee off the back, and just rotate the tank forward, drop it down, lift it in. Now just going to drop the back down, hold the front up for a minute, just feed the cables underneath so you go down over them, they don't end up down the side. Just rotate until you feel the two bungs at the front and push it right forward. And back down over their holes. You can see the hole straight away, you know it's mounted right. Let's drop the bolts in and the tank's back on. I have to just a little feel for it. There we are. Get them both seated before you wind the first one in. And again with these, lean on them, they don't need to go in rock hard. Just give them they're only a little 7mm bolt, that's it. And the tank does need to move. It's important it moves, so nothing fractures. There we are. That's it. Right, seat back on and we're nearly done. And there we are. Fit the up under here. There it is. You can get longer ones. I think that's one of the things on the list. Get longer ones that stand out the back. You just do it with your fingers. That's all for another day. So there we are, all done, back together. Now that's what I've removed from the bike. All that there. There's a little unit that goes in the middle that went in there. That it stayed on the bike because it's so unobtrusive. It's smaller than a coil and it lives up underneath. If you're building a chopper with a high neck Harley tank or something and you want all that completely clear under there, then you can remove it. Like I said, you can use a little tiny 50 ohm resistor in there, solder it in and then put it in a piece of heat shrink and you wouldn't know it's there. You can go better and further if you want to, but I don't need to because I'm leaving the standard tank, and that's all you see. There it is. It looks like a cylinder head bolt down there. Tiny little dab of orange paint just to make sure it doesn't turn or rotate, and it's done up to, in my view, the correct pressure. It's got a copper washer. The copper washer itself is a soft surface, so it will make a nice seal and a little bit of silicone in there. They ain't going anywhere. And if I ever need to take it out, if anybody ever wants to put this back in, why on earth you do that I don't know, but there you are. So that's an AIS and that's it, removed. It's as simple as that. Very easy task. Remember, it's an emission control item. It's not for the running of the bike. It doesn't assist the bike to run better or perform better or produce more brake horsepower. All it does is it burns the unspent gases in the exhaust so that by the time they puff out the back, they fart flowers and not noxious gases. And that's all it's about. And if you don't want that, if you're not bothered about that, and that doesn't shake your radical conscience, then do the same to yours if you want to. It's as simple as that. And hopefully it will stop the popping in the exhaust. I'm not going to test it now because it's 9:30 at night. We've got some nice neighbours. We don't upset them because this is quite loud nowadays. But we will be testing it shortly. All of it, all together. Got a little bit more to do. Tomorrow I've got to go to the tool shop and get the conical hole drill, and we're going to get involved in drilling the heat shields and then spraying them so we can finish the exhaust because it isn't quite finished as it is. But there we are. That was AIS removal. It's as simple as that. It really is, and that will be okay under there just to exist as it is because it's still plugged in, so the bike doesn't even know it's missing. Alright, take it easy. Thanks for watching Delboy's Garage. Ride safe, and we will see you next time.